On behalf of the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie and all agencies and organizations that support abused women, we welcome you and thank you for being with us today. My name is Teresa McLennan. I'm the Executive Director of the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie. Before we begin our ceremony today, I want to remind and caution our listeners. We will be reflecting and remembering the 14 women who were killed in 1989, also known as the Montreal Massacre. And since that time, and each year, we continue to hold this ceremony on December 6th to mark the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. And unfortunately, every year, there are more women who are murdered. And so we recognize this day in remembrance of all women whose lives have been taken from us. Femicide may not be a term that is known by many, and it is sometimes not reported in media reports when women are murdered. Sometimes they do not use the term femicide. But femicide is the word that describes women who are killed because they are women, often within the context of an intimate partner relationship. The murdered women and girls we will be remembering today may have been killed by a former or current partner, a family member, someone known to them, or in some cases, an unknown person who hated women and targeted them specifically. The commonality in all those instances is that women were murdered because they are women. This is gender-based violence. We also want to acknowledge the staggering amount of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada. While making up much less of the population of all women in Canada, the rate of missing and murdered Indigenous women are disproportionately higher compared to non-Indigenous women. Indigenous women and girls are at least 5 times more likely to experience violence than any other population in Canada. And we are really honored that Vanessa is joining us today from Barrie Native Friendship Center, who will speak more about that in a little bit. Knowing that we will be sharing and discussing sensitive information today, we ask that you take care of yourself during this ceremony and certainly reach out if you need support or to talk about your own experience. We have skilled counselors available on our crisis line that is open 24 hours a day, and they are ready and available to speak with you if you need to talk about what might be happening for you during today's ceremony. Our crisis line is 705-728-2544. And please just know that you are not alone and that we are here to help and to support you. We would also like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, which include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. The local bands consist of the Chippewa Tri-Council, who are made up of Beausoleil First Nation, Georgina Island First Nation, and Rama First Nation. Prior to the middle of the 17th century, the Wendat Nation occupied these lands. We would also like to acknowledge the Mohawk Nation, as this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. Our organization is committed to ending violence and oppression. We recognize and share the struggle against the systems that have dispossessed Indigenous people of their lands and denied them their rights to self-determination. This work is essential to human rights work across the world. We are grateful to have the opportunity to do this work in this community, on this territory, as we strive to strengthen and heal our relationships. So today is a very important day. It is important for us to come together as a community and remember the women who have been tragically killed over the past year and those women from the Montreal Massacre. Today, we honor those women and we become their voices. There were 35 women killed over the past year that we will be remembering today. And that 35 may not be an accurate number, in that it is sometimes very challenging to find accurate statistics. We know at a minimum there are 35 women who've been murdered, but many cases are still not public. Sometimes cases are coded differently. And so what we understand and know is that that number is most likely higher than 35. These 35 women that we're going to be talking about are from Ontario alone. And today, across our country, in every province and city, murdered women's pictures and names are being remembered. This is a sad day for all of us as we find ourselves here again because more women have lost their lives. In previous years, we shared that every 6 days in Canada, a woman was killed because she was a woman. Now that figure is closer to every 2.5 days that a woman is killed by someone who is known to her. We have moved in the wrong direction. Every 2.5 days, we lose another mother, a sister, a grandmother, an aunt, a daughter, a friend, a coworker. Our goal as a community of women's agencies is to be united, rally together, speak out about violence against women, and no longer tolerate the subtle ways we allow the putting down and suppression of women that encourages the violence to continue. All of us need to have a united voice, a voice that speaks up for the women who have been killed and the women walking around us every day that are continuing to experience violence. Our agency definitely sees a continual flow and request of women and their children coming into our emergency shelter. We have equal, if not more, numbers of women who access our outreach services. Many have fled the violence that they've been living in, but many are still living in those violent situations, and they are trying to find a way to create safety for themselves. Recent data from Statistics Canada reports that domestic violence calls to police agencies across Canada have increased by 12% in 2020. What we also know is that most cases of violence that women are experiencing goes unreported. There are many reasons for that, but a failure in the systems that are designed to protect women continue to fall short. So we know that the 12% increase in 2020 is a low estimate that is not reflective of the true increase that is really happening. Women are fearful. They are afraid to leave. They know that they are most at risk of being murdered when they try to leave or have left their abuser. This year has been particularly hard as we have all navigated the COVID pandemic. Women living in abuse were forced to remain indoors, isolated, and at home with their abuser. Calls to our crisis line were filled with scared women that didn't know where to turn or what they could do. They feared COVID and feared what being isolated with their abuser could mean. Their risk was growing as more lockdowns and measures were needed to prevent COVID-19. This has been a difficult year, and we all hope that COVID-19 will end soon. But the ongoing pandemic of violence against women rages on, and it will most likely continue. Long after COVID is a distant memory, violence against women will remain. It is a pandemic that was here long before COVID and will unfortunately be here long after COVID, unless we take action and we use our voice. Today is a crucial and important day where we put our focus on the women who have been taken from us, and we remember them and we honor them. A day where they will not be forgotten, where their lives need to mean something to us, where their deaths will spark a change in the words, actions, and commitments of everyone in our community. We will be talking later about what you can do to save a life, what your call to action can be to protect another woman from being murdered, as we remember all women who've been killed because they were women, and speak to women who right now are living in violence, right now. Collectively, we can make a change. Collectively, we can say no more, time is up. Collectively, we can demand our voices be heard to those that can make real change happen. Collectively, let's demand that a national action plan to end violence against women is adopted and passed by our government. Collectively, we can do that. So I thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope that today is a moment for you to reflect on those lives lost and know that that could be your neighbor, your family member, any woman that you know, because the incidents of violence against women are so incredibly high. So I would like to now introduce Vanessa, who is the Cultural Resource Coordinator of the Barrie Native Friendship Center, and we are honored to have Vanessa with us today. Vanessa, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you for having me. It's always important to keep our sisters together and these partnerships continuing because, as you said, Indigenous women are disappearing at a high rate, and the stats are staggering. I'm not going to go into stats because there's no really real accuracy about exactly how many people or how many women go missing, and I don't feel it's a good representation of that. But these partnerships are important because, again, together we have to move together to ensure that our women are safe. In the Friendship Center is a place where our Indigenous population come to when they are not feeling safe. The importance of the Friendship Center movement was to create safe spaces for Indigenous people who are not in their community. And that is something that is felt across Canada. This movement has been happening for some time in creating safe spaces for Indigenous people. Specifically, today we're focusing on Indigenous women and having a safe place to go when they leave their community. And again, a lot of women do flee their community because of abusive partners. It is something that we do see quite a bit of, and a lot of them do need a place to kind of call home, and that's where the Friendship Center comes in. We have quite the staff on hand to help our women through these hard times of leaving an abusive relationship. So building trust is one big thing with our community, is having somebody that you can confide in, because telling your story is not always the easiest thing, and we all know this. It's hard to ask for help, and you're talking about a nation who has a hard time even asking for help, because there's been a lot of suppression of Indigenous people in this vast community, in this vast Canada. Um, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on the importance of our women. The importance of our women is that they are very important people because they are the givers of life. We are the water carriers. I'm not sure if anybody knows that terminology. The terminology of water carriers is because we carry our babies in our tummies, and the baby is surrounded by that amniotic fluid, which is the water. And it's so important that we protect our women, and we come together to protect them, because we are the givers of life. If there is no more women, how does the human race continue? It doesn't, because we are the only ones who can give life. We are the community. Like it's so important to understand that sacredness of a woman. A woman is so sacred. She is the portal to the spirit world. She is giving life, and it's important to keep her safe and respect her. Um, and that cycle of life is the continuation of your generations of your people and in your bloodlines and your lineage. Um, so at the Friendship Center, we also have another program, the Kijé program, which is I Am a Kind Man program. And it's a program that's been running for some time through the Friendship Centers. And it is about violence prevention with specifically men. And it's about sharing and caring and sharing your feelings and finding more ways to deal with anger, so those abuse patterns aren't continuing to happen. It takes a lot of work. Sometimes we have people who go through it a couple of times through the cycle, um, and it does take a lot of work to kind of end those tragedies that we face. And I myself here at the Friendship Center also help to prevent violence against women and focus on missing and murdered Indigenous women. It's something that is just, it's hard to encompass in a little bit, but just to let people know and the women to know that there is a safe place always at the Friendship Center. There is always a kind ear, a kind heart there to listen and help you through anything that you're going through when you're escaping those violent relationships. And that's important to us is building those really good friendships and those relationships with the community and our women. So with that, that is that's what we do at the Friendship Center. And again, there's so much more there to offer at the Friendship Center, but I'm just going to focus on myself and the other program that we specifically focus on violence prevention. Um, so that's all I have to say for the Friendship Center. And again, thank you for letting me participate and including us in this very important initiative and this important day of remembrance of the women that we've lost and the lives that we lost. They are important and deserve to be recognized and remembered. And hopefully this number isn't as big as next year. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And we're just always appreciative of the insight and the knowledge that you share with us and our community. We learn so much, and we cannot even begin um, to talk about, for instance, the numbers of missing and murdered Indigenous women, because we do know that those numbers are not accurate and are not reflective of what truly is happening in the community. And so we are appreciative of your partnership, and we have always looked to you as the experts and looked for advice and guidance in making sure that we can provide the best service that we can as well, and referring women to your agency for support. So thank you so much. We are just so incredibly humbled by the work that you do, and it is so valued and so needed in our community. So thank you, Vanessa. So I would like to now introduce Shannon Murray. And Shannon is a wonderful, insightful woman who looks for opportunities to help other women and to use her voice and her own call to action to motivate and to encourage others. And so we are really open and offer a heartfelt thank you to Shannon in sharing her experience with us. And we hope that, of course, that any woman who may be listening will hear Shannon's journey and know that there is help for any woman who is living in abuse right now. So Shannon, we will hand that over to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning. I was living a dream. He was everything I wanted. He provided a home. He loved me. He cared for me. He promised me the world. And how could I not fall in love with that dream? How could I not fall in love with the life that was promised to me that every little girl dreams of? You know, when you're playing with your Barbies or whatever you're doing, and then you find the one. It's okay for a while. You know, maybe he talks to you in a bad way. You're in the honeymoon stage. Maybe he had a bad day at work. It's okay. It's not okay. That was my mistake. The minute I felt there was one thing and I let it slide, then it just seemed to be that everything just escalated and escalated and escalated. And I just continued to let things slide under the rug. Little by little, without realizing, I was losing a piece of me. I was losing the confident, strong woman that I thought I was. I was compromising my values. I was defending him. Other people noticed. My dad came to visit. I didn't think anything of it. I just continued to just let things go. Looking back now, would I have done anything differently? I don't know, because I was in love. I always wanted better for that person. I always wanted to believe the promises, because when things were great, oh my gosh, they were great. I mean, it was everything that I thought that I wanted. First, it started with verbal abuse, and then it escalated to physical. And I denied every single moment. And most particularly in crisis. So with this COVID, I totally understand how things can be. The beginning of the end for me was, it was a tropical storm and our tensions were really, really high. There was nowhere for us to go. The tension in the house was just unbearable, and I was holding my 1-year-old son. I'm trying to keep him calm. He's crying, and the more he's crying, the more it's aggravating my husband, and the more I'm trying to be calm. Gosh, it was just a no end. Everything was on me to try to keep the house calm, to keep peace. I couldn't keep him calm. I couldn't keep my husband calm. So he hit me across the face, and it just stung so bad. And he punched me, and I was in shock. How could this be happening to me? This isn't how I was raised. I never experienced anything like this before, ever. It continued for a little bit. I remember sleeping with a knife under my pillow that night. But because he was so apologetic to me in the morning, that it was the tension of the storm and everything, he was so sorry. He would never do that again. He, promises, promises, promises. And then it continued, and then the promises of counseling, which never happened. And finally, I just had to stand up for myself. But I lost so much of me. And the only thing that really kept me going, that knowing that I wanted more for myself, was looking at the face of my children and knowing that I had to change the pattern. My son was 1, and I was pregnant with our daughter. I just knew, when looking at my children, as Vanessa said earlier, we are the carriers. And I knew my daughter sensed that. And I didn't want my daughter to think that that was okay. I didn't want my daughter to aspire to have that kind of arrangement or that kind of family dynamic. I didn't want my son to think it was okay to lay his hands on someone else like that. You're supposed to love them. That's not love. It was control. It was living in fear. It was not the fantasy that I dreamed of. I don't remember that in my dream, ever. I used the resources, I got away. I was ashamed, but find that one family member that you can find, or the one best friend, or that one person who can carry your secrets. And if you're that person who can carry that other person's secrets, I'm going to ask you one of the hardest things that you're ever going to have to do. Just love them, support them, listen, don't judge. You're going to help them, but know they may go back to the abuser. Just be there. What you can do, whether you are looking to be a survivor or whether you are looking for someone who supports, is reach out to the Women and Children's Shelter. The outreach center was my saving grace. I didn't have to use the shelter in-house services, but the outreach was there for me to help give me the support and the resources of where I needed to go. I had nothing when I came back to Canada with my 1-year-old child and pregnant with my daughter. I had nothing but a suitcase. That is not the dream that I thought I would have. You're going to go through a moment. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but I promise you, it's worth it. Reach out to the Women and Children's Shelter, and most particularly now with COVID, as Teresa said, there's an increase of 12%, and that's only those that we know that are reported. With the Zoom calls, with the limited distancing, look out for your friends or your family who maybe are a little bit more withdrawn than normal. Just watch for the signs. And if you ever have to say, I always wondered why somebody didn't do something about that. You are that somebody. Look out for your family member, look out for your friends, look out for your colleague. And I'm going to ask you to go to the shelter, to seek out the resources that are there, that are available discreetly online. They'll help you cover your tracks. I promise you that you're worth it, that your family is worth it. And again, I tell you, it's not going to be easy, but now I stand here today, 20 years later, sharing my story. And I survived when I didn't think I would. Okay? I'm going to end by saying that our stories are meant to be here to help us heal. And we must continue to share our stories so we can not only just survive, but to thrive. And with sharing our stories, we must help to empower other people. And that is why we're here, and that is our purpose. Don't be ashamed of your story. And thank you to the Women and Children's Shelter and to everyone in the community for all that you do. I honor you and I love you. Thank you.
Thank you.